And I'm curious about what you think the effectiveness of Joe Biden's message is. You kind of answered this because it was effective in 2020. He won. Now it's the same message, but 4 years later, Donald Trump's a threat to democracy. What are people thinking about that when it comes to Democrats, Republicans, independents?
Well, that's a great question. You know, the Wall Street Journal this morning editorialized that if Donald Trump or if Joe Biden actually thought that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, then he would get off the ticket, he would drop out and let somebody from the Democrat Party, from a younger generation, form a campaign and run against Trump. So, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that what people think about Biden is that he's not going to be very effective. His approval ratings and Kamala Harris's approval ratings are historically low. So, the message that even David Axelrod, a Democrat strategist, has said Joe Biden doesn't have a message, and he also doesn't have a record to run on. It's not like he can say, I lowered taxes, I closed the border, I fixed our broken immigration system, inflation is down. He can't say any of those things. In fact, I can't think right now of one thing that Joe Biden can say that is positive about his record that's going to appeal to those independent voters that are ultimately going to decide who becomes the next president in November.
What's really interesting is that most Americans, according to polls, don't want to see a 2020 rematch. Yet Republicans are resoundingly saying, I want Donald Trump to be the GOP nominee. Why do you think that is? And what do you think the future of the GOP is then?
Well, Donald Trump would only have one term left. And what he wants to do, he says, is finish the job that he started. He talks a lot about the border. He talks a lot about inflation. He talks a lot about fixing, the United States' place on the national stage when it comes to national security. So what I think what happened was in 2022, as you mentioned correctly, that Donald Trump's approval ratings were at a historic low, and Republicans were really looking for somebody else that was going to be as tough and have the same kind of grit that Donald Trump was and be as effective as Donald Trump was during his presidency, but be more likable. And that person didn't emerge as the alternative candidate. And I think that there's two reasons why. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, the left spent so much time and energy and money on these 4 indictments that Donald Trump has, hoping to knock him off. But also what happened was the expectations for who I think was the main alternative candidate to Republicans was Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis just didn't meet the moment. He didn't go after President Trump as he should have. He was waiting for a one-on-one matchup, which is never going to happen. I think what he's going to do when he reflects on this primary at some point is say, I should have gone after Trump more, and I should have gone after Biden more and his failed record. So when it comes to the future of the Republican Party, and if Republicans are thinking we want somebody like Trump, then Donald Trump only has one term left. So if he wins, he would be a lame duck president. And so the Republican Party would then have a few years to figure out, okay, how do we win the Senate back, number one, but also who do we put up that Republicans are going to like and be as effective as Trump was when it comes to being tough against the people that Republicans don't like, but have a bigger approval rating and maybe have an approval rating bigger in the suburbs and women specifically in those suburbs. I would like to mention one thing that was interesting last night. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution came out with their survey, and it was so interesting to see that the Black vote in Georgia Trump is 21 points ahead of Joe Biden. That makes a very tough map. In Georgia, a Republican needs to have about 10 to 14% of the Black vote. Donald Trump was 21% above Joe Biden. If that holds in Atlanta and places like Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, that's going to be a very tough map for Joe Biden to overcome in those swing states with those kinds of numbers.